Hello, everyone. Welcome to Williams Lyceum. I'm your host, Liam, aka Himbar, and I want to make this much shorter than I did last week. I did want to start out. It's actually been 2 weeks now since I've had this, but I have channel memberships now. Essentially, you'll get um, videos early. I mean, when I upload them, you'll get access to them rather than waiting. Uh, Up to 2 weeks it can often take for it to go public. But so if anyone's interested in that, I mean, I might have some like small things available only to people that are members, but I like to keep most of my stuff available to everyone. Don't want to hide it so much behind a paywall. But there are a couple emojis if I live stream, and of course you'll get a badge, which I have not edited yet. So, but it's just so the default membership badges. So, anyways, it's been a really good week for reading. I finished True Names. I did not finish The Other Dangers, just True Names in here, which is only about 100 pages of this. I enjoyed it. It's rather straightforward Vinge's style, but I think it works rather effectively. It's a nice in between story in some ways. It feels like a step after like the science fantasy you'd see in like the 60s and 70s. This feels like science fantasy as well, but like closer to say like cyberpunk that would follow after it, shortly after it. But yeah, so it was interesting for that. But I'll have more thoughts. My review for it will actually be spoiler filled, as there's really not much to say sans spoilers, um, which happens sometimes. I think I might change that. Sometimes I have reviews and I don't say much in them because there's not much I can say, I feel like, without spoilers. So for those that would maybe have really short reviews, I might start doing spoiler reviews for them instead because I don't really care personally. I mean, if I'm interested in a book, I'm going to watch a review even if it has spoilers in it. So, anyways, so True Names was good. I also finished Last Sword of Power by Gimmel. Also enjoyed that one. I was pretty close to finishing last week, but definitely enjoyable. Very different compared to other Arthuriana. That's essentially what it is. And it's a nice just duology. I mean, not as good as many of the other Arthuriana things I read recently, but um, it's just out there, and it has Gemmel's strengths and weaknesses. It just reads a lot like Gemmel, kind of. Pretty fantastic in a lot of ways compared to some of the other stuff I read by him, though, which is like fantasy light in some ways. Like not a lot of magic or whatever. It's really straightforward. This is like a good amount of magic and like wild stuff going on. So, anyways, I also finished The Sorcerer's House by Gene Wolfe and I really enjoyed it. If anyone wants like a very approachable Gene Wolfe, I can recommend this one. This is probably the easiest novel I've ever read of his. And I've read 15 others, I think. So I think this is my 16th Gene Wolfe novel. I might be off on the math by one or two, but that sounds right to me. So it is about a man who is essentially bumming in a house and he somehow becomes the legal owner of it. And there it is essentially a sorcerer's house. There's weird stuff going on. There's people in the house. It doesn't always like there's just like confusing rooms. Like these windows don't always open the same things, same places. There's weird things going on around the town. But he's writing it all. The whole story is actually written in letters, almost all of them to George, who's the writer's brother, twin brother, but not entirely. So it's pretty entertaining. It's pretty short, and again, it pretty much all comes together in the end. There's not really much left up in the air, right? Because most Gene Wolfe books there's tons left, and it's kind of just confusing. So speaking of that, I'll mention this real quick. I'm pretty close to finishing Soldier of the Mist as well, by Gene Wolfe. This one is a bit more confusing. We'll see how much is left at the end of this one, though it is a trilogy as well. So it is the Latro trilogy. It's the first book in it, and I'm really enjoying it. The Soldier of the Mist is also told in first person, but it is also written down, but it's written down in like a journal, essentially, or something that acts like a journal, where our main character Latro essentially suffers from amnesia every day, where he doesn't remember the happenings of the previous day, and his wild adventures, and him being able to see things that others can't see, essentially cursed. It's an interesting read so far. It is a good Wolfian journey. It's not quite as weird, I'd say, as like Book of the New Sun. But what is? Well, I guess actually Fifth Head of Cerberus has parts that are weirder, but yeah. So I'm definitely enjoying it. It's a bit easier than a Book of the New Sun, but it's definitely feels like Gene Wolfe. It's kind of more of what you'd expect from, I think, than say like the Sorcerer's House. Anyways, the last book I finished, now that we're not talking about Gene Wolfe, was The Familiar Spirit by D.J. Butler and Aaron Michael Ritchie, and that was very enjoyable. In some ways, I'm like scared it'll be the last Hiram Woolley story, because I can't even remember when the Jupiter Knife came out. Maybe 2021. I think it was around the time I started my channel, because I remember reading it right after I started my channel, but not reviewing it because I hadn't reviewed the first book, and I should have just reviewed it anyways. I will be reviewing The Familiar Spirit, though it'll be maybe a week or two before that review comes out. But anyways, I really enjoyed it. I read most of it at night in my bed when it was dark in the house and creeping myself out. Um, this one, in some ways, feels a bit more unfocused, because Michael is essentially like coming more into a role as like one of the main characters, but he's still not the main character. Hiram is, and so a little unfocused, I feel like, in that aspect. But also like kind of a good transition. Like it, I wouldn't be surprised if we get like another book, like a sequel, and it's just Michael. Like Michael is the main character. Like that would not surprise me at all. Um, and in that sense, the series is probably better called the Cunning Man series rather than Hiram Bowley, if that does happen. And again, it wouldn't surprise me. So there's some interesting stuff going on in this one. It's really interesting that the first one takes place in Helper, Utah, if I'm remembering correctly, which I've been through. I stayed in Price, I guess. And then Moab, Utah is the second one. This one is actually down, it starts in El Paso, Texas, but it's down in Colonia Juarez for the most part in Chihuahua, Mexico, which is one of the only two remaining Mormon colonies in Chihuahua. And well, there used to be some in Sonora, but there aren't anymore. And I didn't know they existed until I went to college. I went to college in Arizona, Eastern Arizona College, which is a school that actually used to be owned by the Mormon Church until I believe it got sold during the Depression. So right around the time Hiram Woolley would be having his adventures. And there's a good amount of people that go to school there from the colonies, and I did. So that's how I know they exist. Very interesting. So this one has a lot of spirits. There's a lot of spirits in this one. And that's the big thing it's dealing with. But it also deals with a lot of like the backstory. Like the first two are like really just kind of doing their own thing for the most part. Like, yeah, there's interesting backstory for our main character, but it's almost like a monster of the week type of thing, right? Like this is just happening and it's not that connected to past stuff and or to later stuff. This one is much more connected to Hiram's past, as we essentially we see his father, and we get to learn some stuff about his mother as well, which really is not that important from the first two books, if I'm remembering correctly. Again, it's been a few years, but anyways, so I really enjoyed The Familiar Spirit. I think it's very entertaining as far as like it's historical fiction, historical fantasy. It has a very authentic sense of magic to it, though Hiram doesn't like calling it magic because he views it as just him as praying to God. I mean, most of these spells are just prayers. Pretty much exactly what they are. They're just prayers, really, right? Which is how most traditional folk magic from Western civilization has been for a long time. It's really just prayers, right? There's a very weird line between like religion and magic that Butler really knows what he's doing and he knows about it, and it works really well. It always seems like folk magic to us today, but of course, it's not always considered that way. In fact, you'll open up in like a book that has a bunch of homilies and like some gospel stuff in it, like a medieval manuscript or whatever. And then it'll just have charms, just like charms. They're just straight up spells, right? Is what we'd call them today. Um, but they're essentially just prayers. Actually, if you read them out, they're paternoster or whatever, included with just other prayer stuff. So, anyways, that is awesome. I like the authenticity of it. It really gives it a feel that you really don't get in any other urban fantasy, because it reads kind of like urban fantasy, but other urban fantasies just don't feel anything like this. They feel just cheesy and just not very good. I'm not a big fan of urban fantasy these days. I used to read a good amount of it, but I don't know. None of it's serious. So, anyways, so that's 4 books I finished. True Names, Last Sword of Power, The Sorcerer's House, and The Familiar Spirit. And I also talked already about Soldier of the Mist that I'm reading. I haven't read any more in Pillars of the Earth or History of the Kings of Britain. Again, I've been really busy this month pretty much, and so hopefully those will pick back up soonish. The other books I've been reading Inda by Sherwood Smith. I just went to the library and picked it up. This book had its moment on BookTube about 10 years ago, and it was on what I would call this corner of BookTube, um, but this corner of BookTube didn't really exist actually 10 years ago. There was like almost no one talking about adult fantasy. Pretty much no one. If anyone's been around watching BookTube for that long, like I have, then you'll probably know what I'm talking about. There's just not a lot. I would say BookTube has mostly grown as it is currently from like 2017, maybe 2019, especially from 2020 on. So, anyways, but I'm enjoying it. Inda is like a coming of age kind of. It is in third person omniscient. The characters so far don't really have a lot of like um, difference between their like the voices of the characters, but essentially the premise of it is that Inda is a prince, essentially, or his parents are prince and princess, and but he's the second son, and so he's meant to be like kind of like the general for his brother when he becomes in charge, essentially when he comes of age, and the oldest one normally goes to the military academy. The second does not. The second stays behind at the castle and gets trained by this older brother when he comes back. And because war looms essentially for the first time in history, the second sons, not just India, but the second sons all over the nation are sent to this military academy. That's pretty much premise. I'm really not that far in. I'm like 60 pages in. So I am enjoying it. But I don't know. I just saw it in my library. I was like getting books with my daughters mostly and was looking for a book for my wife. And then I was like, oh, I was in the same section. So and I remember this book. I've seen it pop up a couple times, but not really on YouTube. Again, for like a decade. So, anyways, one more book I've been reading. I was just reading it actually right before I filmed this video. I'm really not that far in, maybe chapter 5, and that is Shadows Upon Time by Christopher Rocchio. Very excited to be getting into the finale of Sun Eater. It releases next month, but it's very nice to be back with Hadrian. I was telling Christopher actually that I was like, I should make my last review Shadows Upon Time. My very first review I ever put on this channel was Empire of Silence, and so it just feels poetic. I think I'll do more reviews after that. I'm nearing 600 reviews though. So, anyways, there's not much I can say. I feel like besides the fact that I'm really enjoying it so far. I mean, it's a long book, so we'll see how long it takes me. I for some reason doubt I'll be able to finish it this week, even though I read through them fast, right? And I think Christopher's writing tends to be very engaging, at least in his longer works. Um, but he's also very prolix, and that's like my one like piece of criticism mostly is that he just takes too many words, I think, to write. Even though I like his language a lot, and so it makes up for it. It's still I don't know. I think they're just a little too prolix still. So, anyways. That's what I've been up to this week. I've been edited that story that is again still incomplete, but edited some of that this week, but not. I didn't even finish it. I'm behind on stuff I need to do. So, anyways, I've been doing more shorts. I'll probably do even more shorts, and we'll see what words I talk about next. So, Lean from Loom's Lesson. I'll catch you next time. What have you been reading?